Welcome to the Unfinished Business Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Malvin, and this is a show where we interview CEOs, visionaries, leaders, and creatives about what they're doing in their organization today, what they're doing in leadership and creativity to help shape and change the future. So it doesn't matter who you are or what you've accomplished. There's still some unfinished business out there that you want to be able to tackle. And so we explore those stories today on Unfinished Business with Eric Malvin.
Where people in tech connect to amplify. Unfinished business. Human intelligence plus AI. Unfinished business. Moonshot goals that launch you high. Unfinished business. Listen close and you'll learn why.
This episode is brought to you by PackBiz Outsourcing. At PackBiz, we help transportation, software, SaaS companies outsource their customer support and back office tasks with a powerful team in the Philippines that are dedicated to you as remote employees, helping your business improve support, scale faster, while keeping costs in check. For example, we even helped one client save over $600,000 a year of payroll costs by using dispatchers from PackBiz Outsourcing. So if you've ever thought about outsourcing or taking on a virtual assistant, go to pack-biz.com or give us a call at 480-13009. All right. And without further ado, I am very excited to introduce to you guys our next guest. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Solari Crisis and Human Services, a nationally recognized leader in crisis continuum services and organizational leadership. With over 2 decades of experience across behavioral health, human services, and child welfare, he has served as an executive, behavioral health administrator, systems designer, and direct service provider. His expertise spans the development of sustainable and efficient healthcare programs, system-wide transformation efforts, and innovation in crisis response and care integration. He holds a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in social work from Arizona State University, go Devils, and an MBA from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and a certificate in nonprofit management from Duke University. He is a licensed master social worker in Arizona, a certified professional in healthcare quality, and a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives. He currently serves on the National 988 Center Committee, the board of directors for the International Council of Helplines, and is the former board president of Lifeline International, reinforcing his commitment to advancing global crisis response systems. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Justin Chicks. So welcome, Justin, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Awesome. And now I know that's a wordy intro because there's a lot that you've done, but why don't you break it down in your language, in your words here. Tell everyone in the audience, what do you do here at Solari, and tell us about Justin.
Yeah, so I'm a social worker by trade. So I am just passionate about human interaction, human innovation, and really being able to help people wherever they need help. And so I've had a journey when it comes to leadership, really focused around mental health and substance use needs and suicide prevention. I didn't set out to be a CEO. I just set out to make a difference. And that's really, it's worked out for me. And being here and with Solari, I've been here almost 12 years in my role as CEO. And it has been a wonderful adventure, that entire journey. So I'm honored to be able to work with an incredible workforce, doing meaningful work every day. I get to get out of bed every morning and know that the team that I support is saving lives every day.
Man, and that is incredible. You're one of my favorite people just because of what you guys do here at Solari. But, like I said, you guys are one of my favorite companies because of the impact you guys make, not just here in Arizona, but, in other parts of the country as well. And I have a hard time. I was thinking about it, like, who do I know that has made such a difference in the world personally? And I can't think of anybody that's made such a big impact. But maybe explain for people who aren't familiar with Solari or the work that you guys do, tell us some more about that.
Yeah. So we're a nonprofit organization. We're headquartered here in Tempe, Arizona. We've been since 2007. We were created to be a suicide and crisis hotline. And we supported Maricopa County initially, the greater Phoenix area, and we've grown over the years. And really this intersection of data-informed services from individuals facing their worst day to the soft and squishy side, I call it, of clinical intervention, be able to support individuals and families, again, that are having their worst day. And it is a powerful thing. We're now doing over 600,000 calls per year come into the crisis hotline that we manage. We're now providing 9-day suicide and crisis lifeline work in 3 states, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Colorado. We have just been awarded a contract in Arkansas.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So we're
4 states soon.
so soon to be 4 states, and we're excited to be able to ramp that up. So that's been really exciting. And from when I started, we were about $15 million, about 145 staff, and today we're 94 million in revenue and 780 employees.
And for you guys listening at home, you talk about growing a business. That is crazy to be thinking about, because like I've been trying to grow my company to. It's funny when so Justin and I have some history. We've gotten to know each other over the years. Obviously, both run call centers, so we got some things in common. And I've always been chasing him. Like, I'm going to get my call center bigger. And it's hard because you keep growing too, but it is so much work to scale up a company, an organization from, smaller team to a bigger team. You don't just go out and hire a bunch of people. Like your entire business has to change, right?
It's fundamental to, the concept of what got you here isn't going to get you there. I really had to own that and take that on for the team that we have that got us from one to our board of directors to our workforce is very, very complex. You mentioned I got my MBA and I reached a point that my social work degrees just weren't keeping up to the complexity of business that I really needed to be able to tackle. And so as we got more complex, I was able to go back to school through COVID and really tackle that. And I'm learning every single day something new, and it continues to be more and more complex.
Cool. And I want to get into this here because I'm really interested to learn more about how you got to where you're at, because there's a theme on the show here where we get a lot of people on who didn't expect to be in the position they're in. I think a lot of business leaders, for the most part, at least the ones I try to surround myself with, we kind of started from scratch, or like either in our career or business. And we didn't have a big backing, didn't have a bunch of funds to go out and start something. And like here at Solari, even though you didn't start it, but you had to take this organization and grow it. Talk to me about like when you first started getting into social work. How did you end up getting into this role now, leading the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question, Eric. I started out after my undergraduate, I was working in child welfare. So I was a child protective services investigator in the state. So
that's tough work, I'm guessing.
It was very tough work, very heavy. But I learned quickly that there were so many passionate people about doing the work of saving kids and doing what we can to keep family units together whenever we possibly could. But the administrators in these roles were clinicians that reached a certain point that they were promoted into leadership without familiar in business, and they weren't given the tools and resources they needed to really succeed, and they weren't passionate about leadership. And so I committed myself when I went back to grad school was that my goal was to help the helpers. And if I can, I think in a macro way, I like policy, I like systems thinking. And so being able to apply that, that got me out of bed in the morning, was being able to help the people. And as a clinician, I might be able to help a few thousand people in my career. And that's really impactful. But if I can help a few thousand clinicians who then help a few thousand clinicians, it grows exponentially. And so I just owned that at the time. And I was able to work on policies, able to work with the state and manage healthcare and really be able to make an impact. So the people that are passionate about doing the direct service work, the one-on-one interactions with individuals and families, get to keep doing that. We really brought that philosophy here to Solari, where we're like, you do what you need to do and what you desire to do. If you want to grow within the company, great. Let's create a pathway to do that. But if you want to keep doing what you're doing every day, let's embrace that. Let's own that. So that was kind of the mentality that kind of got me to where I'm at with the organization. This organization was floundering when I came in, and we did not know if it was going to survive.
Oh, wow.
My wife was very upset when I took this job. That we thought it was a sinking ship. I thought I might be able to save it. And she thought that ship had sailed and that I'm going to go down with it, my reputation along with it. We've been able to put the right team in place, and a wonderful board of directors that supports us throughout this journey. And we are where we are today.
Wow. And so Craig, incredible story on how you got here. When did that shift happen for you? When did you realize like I could make a bigger impact if I really changed what I'm doing?
Yeah, it's harder to find the switch moment. It was a culmination of these experiences of really bad supervisors and leaders that were just not, they didn't have their heart in it. They're jaded and they were giving up on the why. And for me, it's intrinsic to want to help people. And if we lose sight of the people that are in need, there's something broken. And so that was kind of the switch and the pivot. And so I was able to really focus my social work skills and harness those to administration, and then policy. And I became a policy wonk. I never want to be a politician. I still don't want to be a politician, but I understood them and I understood how to sell and market the services to those that needed to make key decisions across the aisle in a complex world, and it's getting more complex every year in that space. And so I didn't know again where it would go, but I knew I was going to be able to make an impact, and I wanted to make an impact and create an environment where staff can thrive on the front line.
Awesome. And you mentioned, when you first started here, you talked about your team. And one thing I also like to talk about, it's one of our core values at my company, is teamwork. And there's a lot of business leaders out there, and we both know this, that we forget either, we have a team and we forget to use them, or don't use them appropriately, or we don't have the right people on the right team. Talk to me about how critical it was to build the team around you to help get you from when you came here, and that was a sinking ship, to now you're looking at entering your fourth state.
Yeah, it's having the team to surround you that has a common goal and understanding of the mission. And being in the nonprofit space, it's a little easier for us in this sector because the mission drives everything. Bottom line is mission first. Now, no margin, no mission. So we have to maintain a healthy margin to achieve our outcomes. But building that team and kind of breaking it down, to me, it became all about the why. Why are you here? Now, whether you have the skills yet or not, if you don't have, we had to be able to build trust. And so we worked through The Speed of Trust. Was an early book for us to work through as a team and really be able to assess. And it was an incremental process of a team member got us from one stage to the other stage, but then they may not have been the best one to continue on. They may have moved on and then there maybe have been somebody else going up and taking us to the next direction. And I'm not naive to think that I don't want this company to live and die with me and where we are today. I don't want to get the founder syndrome sits in with companies so many times. There's going to be a day where this company is bigger and growing beyond even my skill set. And there may be a day that the board decides you're not the good fit for this. And I will be okay with that when that day comes. But I'm going to do my best to progress this organization that it continues to live in perpetuity far beyond my time and tenure here. But it really comes down to building trust, understanding the why. And then my philosophy with the leadership team is I hire to my weaknesses. So as a social worker and a clinician at heart, I'm a bleeding heart. That's just my thing. But I live in the gray. I'm not a black and white thinker. And so I like to find win-wins for everybody. And how do we balance it? So really being able to have that opposite on the team. And then we build around that to make sure that we're filling all the gaps and acknowledging where my weaknesses are and complementing that. Today, we have an exceptional executive team that supports. I'm the second youngest as in tenure on my team, being here almost 12 years.
That's crazy.
Our CFO joined us just a few months ago. But apart from that, the rest of our executive team have been here 13 and 14 years in a variety of roles within the organization. And so our president I was able to split my role 2 years ago from president and CEO to CEO, and then was able to promote our chief operating officer to the president role. He's an attorney, so he is the black and white thinker.
So you guys will probably butt heads a little bit sometimes.
It's a dynamic tension, but we hold each other accountable and we've grown together. And I think that polarization of perspectives that we come from, the why is the same. Mm-hmm. For us, the why and the mission is paramount to us, but we balance each other out in such a meaningful way. And I think without having those opposites stationed throughout the executive team, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Oh, that's some great leadership advice there. Bringing in people that are your weaknesses. I think too often in business, we look for people that are like us. And what do you have? You have a team of mini-me's that all have the same weaknesses. And you probably get to see that out in the real world too, with different organizations. And so it's just really fascinating, that you're able to apply that here and build such a strong team. Because I know that's just one of the battles we've been going through in my company. And I think, every company struggles with that, but
it's comfortable. We have to kind of humble ourselves down and own our strengths and weaknesses and how to empower others to fill those gaps. And it's so hard when as a leader, you think you have to be everything to everyone, and being able to acknowledge this is what I'm good at, and then this is what I'm not. I'll be the first one to admit, I hate confrontation. I want to find a win for everybody. But there are times that we have to have difficult conversations. And my team knows that when I have those conversations, it's reached a critical point. But being able to have the self-awareness and commitment to it, it's not as comfortable. And there are days we have really difficult conversations, and we have a lot of transparency within the organization. And it feels like a family at times. You always say, don't call your staff to call them a team versus not a family, because every family is dysfunctional to it. Yes, but I embrace that we bring our authentic self every single day to it. And there are times we bicker like siblings, or we have hard conversations like a parent to a child, but then we have some incredible wins as an organization, our ability to celebrate. That's where the soft and squishy part of me, the emotional component kind of comes out. Because, we're doing more than a simple transaction. We are saving lives every day, and we can never lose sight of that.
Yeah. And, you talk about your bleeding heart, and, you put your emotion out there. And I think a lot of business leaders, a lot of times they show a different face in front of their employees, right? And they put on this mask of who they are because they don't want their employees to see that they're vulnerable. But what has that done for you in your career, in your leadership, being more vulnerable in front of your staff like that?
Yeah. I go back to the Brene Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. It's a great book for folks to kind of open up it. I had a personality assessment early in my time here, and it was your natural style versus your adaptive style. So who you are when things are good. And with your team, you put on a front here. And then when crisis hits, your natural anxieties and other things come out. So teams struggle in times of stress. But the team learned, and I learned with the assessment, I'm the same. I'm a terrible liar. And so it is just I am who I am.
Going back to the early days, you've been here 12 years. And when you first came in, things weren't so great. Now, what was a moment when you realized this is going to happen? Like, we are going to turn this around. I mean, I know you knew from the beginning, but like, what was it that you actually saw when it was like, this is going to happen?
Before I came into the organization, I had some optics just from my other roles in the space and in the community, knowing the mission was solid. The frontline staff were solid, but the philosophy from a leadership perspective was where it was flawed. We had 12 years ago, millennial surge into the workforce was happening at that point. And it was just how you manage staff was different. And then the leadership team, not malicious or anything else, that they just applied kind of a Gen X or model of
management
of management. That was more transactional, and millennials wanted purpose. They wanted meaning. And so I came in, and that's where coming in with the why part. And so it's not, they didn't want to be told what to do and just do it. And then there's consequences if you don't. They wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so being able to come in with that, I'm like, the mission is solid. The frontline team is solid. We've got to tackle that. So I went straight to the front lines, met with the staff for a few months. We had a staff challenge, and there are things like, with our call center, you weren't allowed to walk through the executive suite to go to the bathroom. It was you had to go down the hall and kind of come around. We had to go to the restroom, and I'm like, why? Like, well, we didn't want to be disturbed. You take the shortest path with possible.
Well, and plus, you probably start calculating as the leader, or the cost of everyone walking around all this. For that.
Exactly. So it logically doesn't make sense, and then culturally it doesn't make sense. And things like, could you eat at your workstation? And what you wore. We're a contact center. I don't really care what you wear. I want you to be comfortable. If bunny slippers are the way you want to go, that's great.
Don't show my team this anymore. We have a dress code now. Those like the early days.
But it was what I put in front of them was empower the staff to write the policies, empowering them to make some big decisions. And
because you could have just rolled it out and said, hey, this is what we're going to change. But you made a choice to say, let's get them involved and have them, because you probably already know what they're going to say. You know what they're going to, you talked to them. You didn't make that choice ahead of time. you got down with the frontline, which again, more advice for leaders. Talk to your frontline, talk to the people who are doing the actual work and get their feedback. Because what were you hearing from them versus leadership?
It was one of the executive team members when I came in. We were having as an employee with some large feelings, but trying to make things better, and it was expressing them more emotionally. And this executive goes, "Let's just cut them off. Let's cut them loose. We'll take the risk of a lawsuit, but let's get rid of them because employees are a dime a dozen." I said that phrase.
Oh, they said that phrase.
They said that phrase to me in a meeting, and I said, "This isn't going to work. That philosophy right there isn't. I can't change that. I can't pull that. Making a statement like that employees are expendable." And so I parted ways. That was the why. We were never going to. It was clear as day to me at that point that I was trying to figure out, can we work together? Are you going to come along this pivot in this journey of change? And it was clear that they weren't. So like, let's call it what it is. We're both going to be successful. They left, they went to a competitor, but it worked out for us. And so being able to meet the staff where they are now, middle management was the hardest to change because I wanted them to give up what they perceived as control and power, and by empowering the frontline staff. I went straight to the frontline staff. I said, "What do you want? What do you need?" And middle manager was like, "I'm the filter. I'm supposed to be
jumping over."
And I lost a large portion of our of our middle management in that first year. But
that must have been some stressful nights. So with your wife, like, I told you this isn't going to work. You're telling me another person quit. Don't you need them?
It was hard. A lot of lost sleep, and tech systems were strained and stressed. We were coming off an audit that the company had been falsifying some data reports before. So I had to go to our funders and be like, "Look, these great reports that you're putting out publicly, the data's not right. And there's a flaw, there's an issue." And so really had to come in with humbly and repair relationships and had to say sorry and ownership. And I learned then that it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. I wasn't even here. But all of it fell on my shoulders at that point. It was my job to fix it, and owning that. Blame goes nowhere else. You allow your frontline staff to take more of the credit than they deserve, and you take all of the blame, and you wear that. And so I continue to harness that even today.
That's incredible. So there's so many awesome lessons. Thank you for sharing all that perspectives, because a lot of people listening, we all need to get better as leaders, and there's some great examples here that you're sharing. So appreciate that. Now, 12 years ago, when we first met, it was like around the COVID era, which was a crazy time in your career. And I remember when there was a business group we were part of, Peer Advisory Group Vistage. We were both pretty young, but I had built this company from nothing. I joined this group. There's all these CEOs in there. And then Justin is over here talking about, I've got to take a call from the governor. And you're dealing with the COVID hotline. So how did you guys go? You guys went from you came in here and fixed things up to in 2020, earning the trust of the governor's office calling you for help for things.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if that would have happened if you guys were in the state you were when you first came in.
It definitely wouldn't have happened. I'll come back to the theme earlier, is trust and repairing relationships and vulnerability and transparency. What really did it for me working with the governor's office was, to be on speed dial of when something breaks and something's going wrong. I need to call Justin. I need to call Solari and get, they're going to be part of the solution. And I didn't say no first. That's, we start with that sounds hard. Let's figure out how to make a win here for everybody to succeed. But it was this trust building. And so part of what we did, and I made the call early, was that we had the data issues where the data integrity was in question. And I said, we're going to fix the data and we're going to publish it. And so we put all of our contact center metrics on our website. It updates every night automatically. It's running 30 days. You can see how many calls we took, what our abandonment rates were. You can see all the statistics, why people are calling. And I said, it's going to set itself. It's going to run off our software at the back end. Nobody's going to touch it or manipulate it at all. And it's going to tell the story, good or bad. It is the story. Quickly, it built trust to the point now that at least monthly, the governor's office pulls our data off the website and presents it to the governor as, here's how the crisis line is operating in your state. And that level of trust and transparency, I think, went hand in hand to be able to build that over time. So, but I'm all about the win-win. It's you can't present me with a problem that sounds impossible, and then how do we do it? So,
so you rose to the challenge.
I rose to the challenge, and COVID's a great example. We got a call from the governor saying, we have this issue with COVID hitting us. What do we do? And we need to connect people to, especially when the vaccines started coming out, we need to connect people to the vaccines and how do we get them supported? They asked me on a Saturday. And by Friday, we had a whole new contact center up and operational and running. We had 6 days.
In 6 days.
In 6 days, we turned that hotline on.
It's crazy what you could do in times of pressure like that. Because I bet you if you were given that task from the governor's office and you're like, you've got 6 months to prepare, you probably would have taken all 6 months and probably made perfect hirings and done all this stuff. But instead, 6 days.
6 days. And it was I'm trying to transition all of our staff. As a contact center, we were all in office. Like I had 3 remote staff at that time. And we had to transition all of them home and switching from desktops to laptops. And laptops were scarce at that point because everybody was transitioning to work from home. And so me and the executive team were driving to every Walmart, Target, Best Buy in the Valley. And some even further. I remember us going down to Tucson and trying to pick up laptops wherever we could to put this thing together in 6 days.
So you cleared out the state's supply of laptops.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm sorry that we took them, but we needed them at that time.
Was there anything that really shaped like how you are a leader today from going through that experience? Did that change you at all as being a leader? Like, because you mentioned you are who you are, and that's what you bring every day. So maybe you didn't change. It's just worked out that that's who you are, and you thrived in that environment.
I've learned a couple really important lessons. One was just because I can do something and we can do something as an organization doesn't mean we should. That was the right call. But there are other projects where I get the calls and the pressures from political leaders that have carrots that they want to dangle. And I have to come back to mission. And we've done some projects that were really impactful, yes, but we're pretty far off a mission for us. So trying to line that back up. Yes, we could do it. Yes, this is what you need. I'm not certain who else could do it if it's not us. But I also have to acknowledge sometimes that's not my problem.
There is a great parallel here in business, right? Like how often in business does business owner, the shiny object syndrome, right? Where you see something, you're like, our business needs to be able to do this. Right now it's AI, but there's always something like that you want to integrate in your company or pivot or change. And so how do you determine as a leader that this isn't part of our mission? Like, because you get yourself really committed into these things. I mean, as a business leader too, you bring on clients, you start offering a service and you realize this is losing us money. Like we can't keep doing this. We're gonna have to talk to people and end services that they were trusting. So how do you as a leader navigate through that?
Yeah, I know myself and I can fall victim to bright, shiny objects and fixing critical issues in moments of crisis. I come to solution focused. So part of it was giving up control. So new business opportunities come. We have a committee that I'm not allowed to be in. They look at it first. They do a snapshot. They've got a scoring algorithm to it, a matrix that looks at those features. Yes, let's weigh who called and asked for us to do the service. That's important. That has weight. But also, is it going to be profitable? And what's the timeline? And can we pull it off? And so I'm away from the days of saying yes to the project and yes to the timeline that others set. And then go to the team and say, you've got to bend over backwards, give up nights and weekends to hit this deadline that was set. There may be days that we have to do that, but I try and make them as far and few between as possible. And so I'm really focused on work-life balance, and we take on business when it makes sense, and being much more disciplined. I turn down, yes, we've grown going into our 4th state, but I turn down way more business than I accept because it's not mission aligned, or I know the consequence is going to burn our team. And it's going to hurt our flagship. Our core business, what got us to these opportunities to take on new states or new business opportunities is our core service. And I've been a part of organizations that take their best performers and go send them out to set up new business, send them out to do that. And then the flagship that got you there starts to suffer. And so I've got a great partnership with our board of I'm allowed to grow. I have that permission to grow from the board, which is great. And to innovate and to be curious, but the flagship can't suffer as a result. And being able to have that check and balance I get it from the top, from the board of directors, and then this new business committee that I'm not allowed to be a part of on the other end as kind of a buffer.
That is great advice. And I think for me, I could say something similar with my business too. Like one of the things I'm weak at is like dealing with pricing. I just don't like numbers like that. And like, well, you have to pay this much in that month. Because I mean, there's at the end of the day, like you said, profit. We have to make margins. Otherwise, there's no mission. There's no business for your company. You're not making margins. And so I had to remove myself from that process, and that was so freeing. Like that, not be involved with increasing pricing, changing pricing, giving the quotes. Like a whole team does that, and I don't even present it. I'm like, that looks good. So great advice for people out there. So if there's something in your business like that that's a roadblock, how can you delegate that to another team member so that someone else can have that as their strength?
So absolutely.
Now I printed out an article here that you guys were in recently, and because I wanted to talk about the state of the world a little bit, because what you guys are dealing with, you're dealing with it on a different level, but in some way we all are in our businesses no matter what. And so the article here, this was from ABC 15, and it's Arizona mental health programs react to federal funding changes and reinstatement, right? And so this was when you guys there was $2 billion in grant funding that was slashed and then brought back. And I feel like that thing that's happening, and I was talking about this with my leadership team yesterday. We just approved an extra like $3,500 a month in fuel incentive, well, not incentives, just bonuses to the staff for the people driving to the office, because the fuel cost has gone double to triple in the last 45 days in the Philippines. And, we're like, man, we're trying to plan for like a fuel shortage in the Philippines, but how do you know what could happen tomorrow? Like all of a sudden everything would be fine, but then there's a new crisis. So how do you guys navigate this world? And try to frame it in a way where people are dealing with this back and forth.
Yeah.
And how do you plan and think about the future when it's like there's so much uncertainty, not even on a month to month, but on a day-to-day basis right now?
Yeah, it's I'm typically afraid to open up the news some days because I don't know what's coming. And the hardest thing in the piece that we felt this past year a lot was kind of this gut reaction, and we're going to make a big cut here, and just kidding, we're going to fix it. And sometimes it's like, if you're going to cut it. Then let's work our way through the issue. One of the blessings that we have as an organization is our hyper focus on a limited scope. We don't own buildings. We don't have a lot of assets that we have to maintain the cover. And so we're very liquid. And so in the event of a crisis or a program gets cut, we can shift our funding strategy in such a way that we can modify costs to make sure the organization as a whole continues. And so that's something not everybody has a luxury to manage. So we don't have long brick and mortar, and we have exit clauses in our leases. And so making sure that we're planning for the worst case scenarios, because we're dealing with so much government, federal and state money that is finicky at times. And so being able to pivot quickly.
You're saying that this is a normal scenario for you guys almost. Maybe not this extreme, but this whole back and forth thing, you guys plan for life to be like this in your environment.
We plan for cycles. And so our contracts come up for bid, and we have to rebid on a periodic basis. And so it's not, or our funder gets changed. And so now we have a new funder, or they want to see a change. So we have to renegotiate on a routine basis. The change today that goes into effect, we had, coming out of that article example was, we got notified at 10 p.m. Arizona time of an effect that took place at midnight Eastern time.
So yeah, right as it happened.
It was an immediate thing. So it's one thing to say, like, we're going to cut a program, or we're going to cut funding for a program in the next 30 days. I can respond to that. But companies were having to make decisions. And so when that happened, people were laying staff off and modifying programs by 10 a.m.
We were talking about 6 days earlier is crazy. You're talking about 12 hours, not even 12 hours, like less than 12 hours.
And so many companies in our space are running on such thin margins that, and not planning for those what if events. And so being able to balance it's hard in our sector because we get caught up in the mission and the purpose. And so we want to put every penny back into it, and we take risks financially, and we just have to have balance there.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And maybe there might be some nonprofit people watching. My brother works at a nonprofit out in Richmond, Virginia, and it's kind of opened my eyes to how many there are out there doing little things all over the country. What would you say to the people out there that they're all having their mini crises right now? And they don't have, I know my brother, their team, I think they got maybe 5 or 10 people, in their nonprofit, a couple $1 million budget. They don't have all these people to delegate to. And, you cut a team member, that's a whole part of your function of your leadership or something. So what advice would you say to those people dealing with that right now that may not have some of the luxuries that you guys get to have?
Yeah, I think first is to plan for the worst case scenarios and you hope for the best. Because when something happens, you can't freeze because these things are coming so drastically and significantly. You have to act. And so many times that's what we're seeing is probably at a heightened level in the nonprofit sector is like, well, mission and purpose and continuity of services and consequences. I get it. And we get it, but we have to pivot fast and we have to be okay with that and be comfortable with the decisions that we're making because they're not our fault.
Yeah.
It's not our fault that we're in the situations that we're facing, situations that we're in. And frankly, and honestly, when it comes to innovation and when it comes to swift decision making, the for-profit sector is getting it right. The nonprofit sector is not. There's not a whole lot different in tax status is the extent. But I view our organization as a social enterprise and making sure that we're functioning. So we get accused of this at times too, of looking more like a for-profit entity, but we happen to have nonprofit status. I'm sure. And that's reasonable. And that's how we are in the position that we're in right now is to be able to create that space. And everything for us is about the mission. Our why, we never deviate from that. But if we freeze, then we start to lose our mission. And so we've got to be able to pivot fast.
And I think even if you're not a nonprofit, you're a for-profit, which probably a lot of people watching are, this is great advice. Like we've been talking about what's going on in the world right now. I remember for going back to COVID, I was fortunate enough, maybe if you could talk to my wife, unfortunate enough to have my family there in the Philippines as the lockdowns were starting. And I remember meeting with my team in February of 2020 when the lockdown started in March. Now I will say, interesting, fun fact, if you go look up COVID, the first person that died outside of Wuhan was in our tiny little city, Dumaguete, where our call center is based. So we had the world's first lockdown in January 2020, and I still brought my family out to the Philippines. I didn't know what a lockdown was. Like, what's a virus like that? Like, so we didn't know. So I went out there, but I remember meeting with my team saying, look, it's not a matter of if this happens, it's when, and we need to start preparing now. And we started planning work from home in February when most people weren't even having that conversation until a couple of weeks later. We were buying up the laptops in February while you guys were like, oh, we still got our desktop. Yeah. But it is really great advice for right now. Like if you're not having those conversations about like, what do we do if something happens, if there's a change, or like if our customers all of a sudden can't fire a product, or you can't get the product to sell to your customers, or your staff can't even get to the workplace because there's no fuel out there. Like there's crazy scenarios that maybe not happening here in the US, but in other countries right now, those are conversations that are happening. So make sure you're having those conversations with your team so that you can prepare, because if they hit you and you haven't talked about how to handle that situation, you're not going to go into it most informed. You talk about data, you need to gather those data points and figure out where you're at and what changes to make. So thank you for sharing. Now, I am curious too, because you guys, it's all public data, so you can go on their website and you could see the stats yourself, but are you guys seeing any shift in society, uptick of calls, like what's happening in the world? How is that impacting your guys? Because if all of a sudden there's 20% more calls, like you probably have to staff up more, or you're gonna have to do something. You can't just sit there and be like, it's another week.
Right. No, it's there's a lot happening and a lot changing. So we have kind of two things happening at the same time. It's kind of a chicken and egg. We really can't figure out what's causing what. We just know demand is going up. And so with the 90-day suicide and crisis lifeline that we participate in, we're addressing stigma as a society. Mental health is becoming more part of our narrative every single day, and at work and at home. And so as awareness is growing, people are more willing to reach out, which is a very good thing. On the flip side, we have a much higher level of anxiety. And so we may see in our statistics will show it over time, is suicide risk is kind of leveling off. And what's coming up, the new call volume is really tied around anxiety. Our highest call volume day ever in this country, all crisis lines included, was Trump's election in 2016. Election night, we got hit. We took over 1,000 calls that night.
how did you guys were able to handle the call volume?
We planned for an increase. We were able to ramp up staffing and at the 11th hour to get through. And so it was people were afraid. People were afraid at the time, and it's not a political statement. It's just that's what the data shows. There's a high level of anxiety around uncertainty, and uncertainty is a huge predictor of mental strain and emotional distress. Your two biggest indicators of suicide risk is feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. And so we are seeing increases in, not that there's things happening around us in the world that we can't change. And so helplessness starts to settle in, and that will never change philosophy is hopelessness. And so those risk factors are real, and we have to be ready to step up to it. And the workplace is really where it's starting right now. And so we're seeing a ton of work being done in workplace mental health, and then high risk industries. Construction is a very high risk industry.
I've heard about that. I have a dentist appointment tomorrow.
But you have agriculture is being impacted huge right now. And so how are we supporting our ranchers and our farmers and in rural areas where we have a lack of resources? And so my fear in our industry right now isn't so much that 988 and other crisis line services aren't going to be around, because I do think we have plenty of bipartisan support to continue 988, which is great, is the other services that we depend on to refer people to and to connect people to, those are getting cut. And that impacts our effectiveness.
You get to see visibility on society that not too many people get to see. That's got to be tough to not start thinking of 1,000 other things to do to try to fix all those other things that you're seeing. It's just interesting that you're in that role. But all right, how do you, you're in a position where you could impact policy. You're talking to people where you're like, hey, we need to do this and that. But you have to stay within your mission. Otherwise, you're going to dilute the effectiveness of what you're doing. But what do you, if you could change something in the world, what would it be?
It's a great question.
I didn't know where I was going to go.
Let's see where I appreciate it. I think it's valid. To me, it is, if I were to change one thing from a policy and a practice and a philosophy level, it would be mental health and substance use are treated equally as general health care. We don't talk about people with cancer as, we talk about them as survivors and strong. But when we talk about suicide or mental health, we talk about weakness, and we talk about giving up, and we talk about somebody who dies from cancer. They were strong to the end. They're a survivor. Somebody dies by suicide. It's like that they quit. They gave up. They're weak. They couldn't handle. That's not true. None of it. And there's so much research around there when it comes to risk around suicide. It is, they want pain to stop. Is what they're wanting, and we have to start changing the narrative around this. And so for me, it would be being able to treat mental health and substance use needs as the health conditions that they are, and breaking down the stigma barriers.
What do you think would need to happen for that to happen?
To me, I think it comes from the top. I think it comes from policy, is making sure that we're funding it appropriately in ways that it is equitable across the board. But then you have the resources that need to come with it. We're retiring more psychiatrists and social workers than we are bringing in.
And yet we're trying to expand mental health access. So how does those seem to be in contradiction with each other?
Yes, we had it was about a decade ago, and I don't know current data on it, but I remember about a decade ago, Arizona graduated one psychiatrist in that year.
What? 10 years ago? In this modern era?
And they went straight to private practice.
Yeah.
Don't blame them for that. But man, that's pretty abysmal statistic there that we're not graduating and bringing people into the workforce. And so it's not viewed as a desirable workforce for many when it comes to healthcare. And so how are we embracing it? What is the narrative around it? And I thought we were making, we make headways, and then policy comes and kind of shifts. And so we just need to continue to keep the pressure there that it is equitable.
All right. So we're talking here about less psychiatrists, less people out there to help, even though, if we're looking out into the horizon, I'm looking at the younger generation, and I've got a lot of concerns about their, they grew up in COVID. They have levels of anxiety that we did not have growing up, it seems. And the big thing out there right now is AI, right? Like, and you could talk to AI, and that's your therapist, and and that's a whole other episode in of itself. But let's just focus in on the use of AI in your space, because like, it's one thing for someone to use it themselves and try to work through their problem. It's another thing when an organization like you decides to put that technology in place to maybe help, when you're like, hey, we got 1,000 calls coming in right now, we can't handle it, we're going to throw some AI in there. How are you guys navigating the AI shift, especially in call centers? We're getting hit left and right, and I'm sure every meeting you get, I bet you're meeting with people in government. Why don't you just put some AI in there and handle the call volume? Can't we bring the costs down? No, how are you handling all this?
No, it's AI is a hot topic. We've been kind of preparing for it the last few years, and we just put together a position paper we submitted to Congress about 2 months ago. And Solari's taken a really hard stance that our focus is how do we enhance the human-to-human interaction. And so what redundant tasks do we have that could be offloaded to AI to make sure that our staff have more time and more presence with the caller or the texter or the chatter on the other end. We are not interested in putting bots on the front end to do screenings and assessments, or we're going to be talking to a bot not knowing if it's human or not. Our job is, and our focus is to focus on the human-to-human interaction, and then what behind the scenes can we gain efficiencies from. And so real-time dictation, quality oversight and management, and so we're able to write progress notes and the documentation we need for regulatory purposes. How do we use AI for training, for simulation training? For our staff is a huge value. We're taking over 500,000 calls a year. It's hard. We have a quality team that's reviewing a percentage of those, but I need AI in place, which we have now, to listen to every call to be able to draw out performance metrics and then flag what we need the human to go in and review further. And so what we're trying to do is shorten the time after and between calls where you're doing busy work that nobody signed up to do this work.
Notating the account call, like it's
the administrative burdens. How do we shorten that so you have more time in between to process what the challenges of the calls that you're on, but also being able to move more calls per hour through our workforce. And so gaining efficiencies, because states are coming to us and going, AI's here, you should be cheaper. And how do we lower the prices? And we know competitors are coming in to say that we could do it with a bot on the front end, and we're drawing a hard line as an organization that we're not going to take the bait there. And so there are those and that want to use it and want to go that route with bots, and they're more than welcome to. We've set an ethical standard for us as an organization that we're going to use AI in the back end as an asset tool to improve the human-to-human interaction, but not replace it.
Awesome. Because for me, for those of you guys listening to the show, you'll hear this phrase repeated: AI plus HI. And I really like highlighting companies and organizations that don't just replace the human with AI or a bot, but augment them. How can we make them better? Maybe even make them not superhuman necessarily, but if you weren't, because I worked in call centers, I worked probably 6-7 years frontline employee on the phones in a call center. And I remember, I always tell my staff, I know all the tricks to get a call avoidance and stuff, but the notating, all the like tedious stuff, by eliminating that or handing off that, you can have more human to human interaction, right?
Yeah.
So do you have any data that shows the impact of bringing some of the technology in? Like, they're not replacing the people, but are they handling more calls now? Are you guys able to take more call volume with less people? Or
we're still in the infancy, so we're still analyzing the data. Our first assessment so far is that we are anticipating, when our systems are fully active, first year we're seeing about a 14% improvement in performance. And so and then that will actually increase to 20 to 25, and we think we'll actually gain 30% efficiencies within after about the second year of implementation.
Without AI, could you imagine making your team 30% more efficient? It's I mean, if you don't realize how big of a deal that is massive change in a company. Like, that could change a company from being not profitable to profitable.
Oh, very, very fast. And so for us, we had to make a case to our board of directors. It takes an investment into AI tools to be able to be like, we need to stay competitive. This is what we need in place. And we're going to create a better environment for our staff, for them to do more of the work that they're passionate about. And so selling that and telling that story and mapping that out for the team That's what took us the longest time the past 2 years here, is really being able to define what is going to be our position from an AI perspective. And we have great vendor partners that have AI integration. They were ahead of the ball when AI was coming. And so we don't have to go out and buy a ton of AI tools. It's their packages are already there. We're buying the module to be able to plug in. And so we're pretty well positioned at this moment to roll out and implement here in the short term.
Awesome. But yeah, you touched on some stuff we're really working on too. And that for me, as a person running a call center, I'm really excited about some of the stuff we could do with AI. That's like the train, like hitting the work that we're doing. Like, it's critical, it's important, but it's nothing compared to the calls, the level of complexity of what you guys are handling. So I can only imagine, like, it's one thing to do a mock call through someone going through crisis. It's another thing to create an AI scenario where it almost feels real. Have you guys been able to get to that level of training yet, or is that in the works?
It's an evolution. We're doing a lot more scenario based, but really trying to get that real feel interaction. Other contact centers in our space are rolling out. There's a couple of products out there that are really doing it, but you're really trying to shorten the amount of folks that join the organization, go through the training, are convinced they can handle it. They get on the floor and they start doing the work under independent status, and they're like, this is too much. This is too heavy. And so we're trying to kind of weed out folks that it's not a good fit on the front end. And so that's what we're doing. A lot of it is simulations. On the first day is simulations. And, I go back to my child welfare days. My first day as a child protective services investigator, my first day in training, they showed the most horrific video of various types of abuse and neglect, and have to bring cleared out.
This is like the nurses that can't see blood or something, right?
Right. And so, but it was impactful. And it was, if you can't handle, this is the reality you're going to be facing, then this isn't a good fit. And so I've been kind of encouraging our team to kind of get to that level of, this is what you're going to be experiencing. You're going to be hearing, and people express their emotional distress in a lot of different ways. It can feel like abuse. Sometimes it is abuse, and we have to be able to work through that. And you're going to hear heavy things. And there are, and in a crisis line, much like a 911 dispatcher, there are times that you do everything you can to save a life. Then that call ends and you have no idea what happens.
I can imagine what that feels like.
And you will never know because of HIPAA protections and other restrictions. And so somebody who has a weapon and an intent to end their life, we are on the phone until police arrive to try and say the call ends, and we don't know.
Yeah. So that's heavy for your staff to have to deal with, which again, I commend you guys for the work that you guys do, because it's such a needed resource. And not a necessarily question here, but I also want to touch on, the work that you guys have been able to do through Solari to help expand access even outside, because I know you guys have done stuff to help get like suicide hotlines established in other countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's I've been able to spend time working with an organization, the Board for Lifeline International and the International Council for Helplines, where we are taking what's worked in more advanced countries that from an infrastructure and tackling this issue, and really being able to identify where there's gaps, where there's opportunities. Suicide is a crime still in a handful of countries in this world.
How does that work?
And so therefore, if suicide is a crime, then having thoughts of suicide is also a crime. And trying to help somebody in a suicidal crisis that you don't report to authorities is a crime. So even having a hotline to support suicide risk, you can wind up in jail. And in these countries. And so we have partnered with other organizations and other systems to really be able to, how do we first decriminalize suicide? Whether it's socially acceptable or not is different. There's cultural aspects that come into play, but legally,
Start there.
Let's break that down. But then we decriminalize it. Okay, well, what impact are we making? And so then it really came down to, how do we then decriminalize and build a crisis line at the same time to be able to replace? We're working in countries, learning about countries that are, people don't have food, they don't have access to clean water, they don't even have shelter, but they have a cell phone. And they will work interesting studies that there are places where people will walk further for a charger for their phone than they will for water or food. And so it's about priorities and connectivity. And so being able to need for connection, the human-to-human connection is so natural in existence in today's world that we have to maintain that connectivity. And so you could think that a crisis line in a third world country is not needed at this point because there's other core needs. No, it's not accurate. We see some significant needs there. Malawi was a country in Africa that we were working towards decriminalizing, and they thankfully passed the law last year decriminalizing suicide. And so, how do we support that? And they're impacted by climate change because there are many farmers and agriculture type and ranching work that takes place in Malawi. They're also greatly impacted by the HIV/AIDS epidemic, where their orphan rate is like 40% of kids have lost at least one parent, if not both.
That's
To HIV/AIDS, and so the risk factors are just continuing to grow there. Access to fertilizer is the primary means of suicide in these countries, and so how do we put restrictions on fertilizer, and as well as standing up a crisis line, as well as putting in the policy needs regarding it. So
That's crazy. I'm blown away at the work that you guys are doing out there. That's really incredible. And like I said, I really wish all of our businesses would be able to make such an impact that you guys are making. So, but honored to have you here sharing that. So thank you. Are you seeing more anxiety out there, or more like I was talking about this with one of our buddies that owns a plumbing company, and he was saying when people call in for plumbing work, they're calling in way more informed now because they are in ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, like diagnosing what's going on, taking pictures, and now they're like, I need this and this and this. Can you come down and do it? Versus this thing is flooding and I don't know what's going on. How is AI changing the calls from like the people calling in, and how you guys are you seeing any difference there?
we are and we aren't. When it comes to the AI in the more informed, much like in general healthcare, we see it in the mental health space where people are Googling their medical condition before they're reaching out for help. And so it's kind of been around for a while. They may plug in their symptoms. It's getting a little more advanced in the intelligence aspect of it's like they are coming in a bit more informed. But we're seeing as people leaving the helping fields and no longer seeking help for a human and are relying intentionally on AI to become their therapist, to become their hotline to deal with their challenges. And so we've seen there's a lot of need and a lot of opportunities for guardrails to better protect folks in this space regarding AI, because that's where people are going to go. And so we need to make sure that there's a link between the AI self-help resource that you're using, and when it crosses a threshold, that we really need to encourage them to contact a human and get them connected to a crisis line or another resource. So we're seeing a bit more informed, but we're seeing more people stopping to call for help out the gate until they reach a certain threshold. And hopefully they know when to call. And then we're trying to work with AI organizations and then at the policy level to build these guardrails and prompts. So Google and Meta have both done really good work from suicide prevention for a long time. And so we need the others to kind of come into alignment.
That is an interesting challenge because, AI and guardrails right now kind of seem like oxymorons, right? Like there's what guardrails, what rules, like, do you see that? Do you see any challenge? Because I mean, it's hard to control the tech companies right now. Like it's not just mental health, it's politics. There's all kinds of stuff that, and in some ways social media is the one causing, the mental health issues as well. So it's this big cycle, but do you think it's going to be the tech companies that are going to be able to come together and put the guardrails in, or is it going to be like the mental health community coming out with their own tools saying, look, we come out with this, it has the guardrails built in, and maybe that ends up being the solution? Do you see any, what's possible?
Yeah, I think my hope is that the tech companies and the AI providers can partner with the experts in the space to be able to build resolution. I want to give the AI organizations the opportunity to come to the table and help build collectively what type of guardrails need to be put in place or should be put in place that are ethical and effective. The other option is regulation and policy. And so we're preparing both ways. So I was in DC last week, and AI was a hot topic there, and we're continuing to have conversation. Minority Leader Jeffries has actually built an AI committee that he's running, but the bipartisan issue is very polarized right now. And so it really is going to depend on where Congress lands in the next election. And you're really being able to see, I talked to some that were like, no guardrails, period. Government has no role in AI governance. And then others are like, we need to build the guardrails. They need to be government led. I'm like, all right, I think you're both wrong. We got to find
something in the middle. Yeah.
Right. We got to find a middle ground here. So my hope, the quickest way to this is to get the tech and the AI industry to the table to work with us around this topic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been curious about that. So thanks for sharing all that. Now we've talked a lot of on this show, and I probably could go into a lot more questions. There's so many interesting things to talk about here, but with all that you've done here, and with all you've done with Solari, and your career, and I don't know, it's interesting to think about where you could end up because of where you've come from. But for you, one of the questions we like to end the show on here is, what is your unfinished business? And so for you, what's something, is there a big goal out there that you want to achieve, something in your career that you're willing to share here?
Yeah, I think it's that's a great question. Again, as a bleeding heart social worker, that we live in the gray, so there's like lots of different things. I do hope and think that we can reach a day that I put the stake in the ground and be like, I helped shape permanent policy impact that continues to save lives and enhance these systems. 988 was a huge victory from 2020 and went live in 2022. I'm very proud to be a part of what little part we played, and I played in that. I want to continue to see that grow and enhance. I want every individual in their darkest moment, in their darkest day, to at least know what they can do, whether they use the tool or not. I can't force, but to know that there is a way out and there's a pathway. What I don't want to ever see again is hear from a family member that if I only knew this resource was available when they were alive. That to me is where I want to see to me is unfinished business.
Well, that's a very noble cause. And hopefully through this show, maybe there's someone out there that that needs to hear this message. And there's some inspiring stuff that you heard today. So thank you again for sharing your story. Like, it's so inspiring that what you guys are doing. And again, my hope is that there's some people out there that are in the younger generation, future leaders that are hearing this and seeing that you can change things. I think for me, the frustration, like I'm with you. I don't want to be a politician, but I want to change things. And so for me, well, I'm not going to sit down with the governor, but I'm going to put this out there in the world and see what happens. But you're out there really doing it. It's just crazy. So if you're wondering how you could make a difference in the world, you don't have to be a politician. It could be people like Justin that are out there behind the scenes making those changes, and not just here in Arizona, not just in the United States, literally globally, which is, I'm thinking about how cool that is. Justin, people wanted to, well, I don't know if they need to necessarily connect with Solari, the organization itself, but if they wanted to, how would they get a hold of your organization here?
Yeah, the easiest way to do it is to go to our website. So solari-inc.org is a great way, or look us up on social media. So to follow and get connected to us, but you can access services. It's a great shortcut to put on your browser to know how to reach Solari. And then as much as we can get the word out around 988, it's an available resource. Every U.S. state and territory is available 24/7.
And if they wanted to connect with you at all, is there a way to connect with you? Or
yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can outreach me directly, justin.chase at solari-inc.org is my email. Feel free to reach out anytime.
All right, awesome. We'll get the links in the show notes if you guys do want to connect. And Justin, thank you again for taking some time. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this for a while. So thanks for being on the show.
Yes, thank you, Eric.
And for you guys watching, if you like what you heard today, if you want to hear more inspiring stories from people like Justin, make sure you subscribe to @BizWithEric on social media, or look up Unfinished Business with Eric Baldwin on your favorite podcast channel and podcast platform, and subscribe to us there. Until next time, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
And visionaries shaping what's to come, building more than profit, lifting everyone. Every path's unique, but it takes a choice to grow. Set your goals and shape the way your future goes. Unfinished business, where people and tech connect to amplify. Unfinished business, human intelligence plus AI. Unfinished business, moonshot goals that launch you high. Unfinished business, listen close and you'll learn why. Subscribe, look for Biz with Eric online, and follow Unfinished Business on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen.